Lord, make me an instrument of your peace, the prayer of St. Francis. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in dying to the self that we are born to eternal life. We are here to be an instrument. There's paradox in that prayer, isn't there? The idea that I must give to receive, the idea that in pardoning I am pardoned, the idea that in my becoming what I am seeking, I give it and I create it. That those two things, though seemingly separate, are one and the same. That like a tuning fork, if consciousness is awakened one place, it reverberates in another, and both things are harmonized, healed, raised. Do we think of ourselves as an instrument of peace? Just think about an instrument, pick one. You want to be the bass, you want to be the fiddle, you want to be the piano. Think of yourself as an instrument, a living instrument. And now just take a moment and in your mind's eye, picture moving throughout the day, picture moving throughout your life as that instrument. Picture how we're playing it. Picture what the vibration of the harmony, the sound, the notes can do. Picture how it flows through and reaches other people, how it in fact even goes into their eardrums and reverberates in their body to make a shift. Picture how it has no limit. We are here to be an instrument. An instrument. The question is, what are we playing? What are we playing? We can tell a lot of times that we're out of tune, right? Sometimes we're out of tune. Maybe sometimes we have an instrument and we don't know how to play it. Or maybe sometimes we're just scratching on the strings. We're here to activate abundance. We're here to co-create. We are here to be what we're here to be. Not to struggle, but to express. What exactly are we here to be doing? Are we here to be creating God encounters, spiritual encounters? Are we here to be circulating God? That's the question. Are we here to be an instrument that is circulating God? And if we are, how do we do that? If we are, how do we do that? I was just recently at the Mac store because I had an instrument that wasn't working well. And going to the Mac store and having the hubbub of an appointment or waiting and all of this stuff, and things just weren't working out. It wasn't going well. And the funny thing about going into a Mac store for me, and that's Apple, going into an Apple store, is that no matter what problems come up, no matter how I'm feeling or what my energy is when I go in, that place is like a tuning fork for love. It really is. To me, no matter what I go in with, there are these people that greet you. They don't wait for you to come to them. They greet you at the door. They're watching for you. And their whole purpose is to help, is to assist. And I am telling you, there's something about these folks that work there. They're like each know what they're doing. They are masters of their field. It's like you go in there and you know that even though this problem is jacking up my mind, even though it's causing me stress, I'm here with someone that to them, this is nothing. To them, this is a game. To them, this is fun. This is play. This is their God field. This is their fun field. And that takes the stress away, no? And then there's also some sort of weird harmonizing energy there that it doesn't matter if you have a little stink going on and you're in your frustration. They are pure grace. It's like they take that and they go, yes, and here's what. I go in there and I feel so taken care of that it just diffuses. It is actually playing an instrument that brings me into harmony. And you'd think I'm talking about something else other than the Apple Store. But I'm talking about going into the Apple Store. They are masterful at being with people in the way they're called to be with people. I was talking to one of the guys as we had the series of divine appointments that made the way things being difficult into very possible in an instant. When you get a wall and instead you keep looking around to see if there's a window and you crawl through it. And so I was at the window right there at the Genius Bar with this gentleman, and I'm watching him respond to everything in this difficult matter, and I'm watching him respond, and I am just appreciating, because this is something that happens to me. I have these just love burst moments where I see people. It could be the simplest thing. It could be someone just being kind. It could be someone just being considerate, but there is actually an explosion in my heart that says, thank you for showing me godness. Thank you for showing me goodness. Thank you for showing me godness. And it happens at times where I could literally just cry at the simplest thing, because it's a reminder of the goodness of people, right? It's a reminder that God is alive. And it's an appreciation of someone. So I'm sitting here kind of gazing in this appreciation moment. And I said to him, when my intellectual mind kicked in and thought, how do you do that? How do they create that? What does Apple do? And I said to him, where do they train you guys, and what is that training like? Like, do they send you off to some Apple camp? And they turn you all into these loving, gracious people that know how to transmute frustration into like power and presence and security? What do they do? Like, because literally I'm thinking this, I know corporate development. It's like there are all these things. And he just looked at me and he said, no. Because I'm thinking, how do they train your personalities? He said, no. All the training's done here locally. He said, I think it's a couple of things. He said, one, I think it's the people, the personality types, the type of people they look for. It's just in their nature. It's in the nature of the people they look for. They're good at looking for the right people. They're good at getting people who love what they do and show up naturally like that. Show up naturally like that. And then the second thing he said was that our whole presence in being here is to help you. To help you. We don't get graded or rated on what we sell. And many of us, he said, we've been in the retail industry or we've been in the tech business where we're always dealing with computers. And it is refreshing to get to be with people. And he said, our only job is to help. That's how we get rated and graded, on people's experience of us. People's experience of us. That's the only feedback they get that helps determine their raises. The whole system is founded upon who they are as an instrument. Who they are as an instrument. And how they circulate that consciousness that they are. Pretty cool, right? So are we all here to be circulating a God encounter, to be creating it? People who do what they love are often naturally circulating that field. People helping, understanding, listening. People being themselves, being vulnerable, being authentic, being real, right? Spiritual oxygen on the planet. People cultivating and sharing their spiritual gifts, developing a spiritual gift and giving it out. Reminding people that this spiritual field around us and within us is real. It's real. So do you believe that we're here to circulate God? I believe that that's the highest form of circulation we can activate. When dealing with the practice of being human or the practice of coming from our spiritual realm, it's ours in every moment to look at the human condition and look at what's normal and ordinary, and then to look at the spiritual condition and the spiritual possibilities and look at what is extraordinary, and then to choose. but we only have one moment at a time. We only have one note we're playing. And we can either choose to come in a moment from our limitation, or we can choose to come from a world and a field of activating abundance, activating God consciousness, activating light. That's each of ours to choose in every moment. And of course, we're here to be gracious with ourselves as we walk this path of unfolding that choice, moment by moment, situation by situation. We talk in abundance teachings about how to activate abundance. And a lot of the ways are ones that we've become accustomed to. Tithing of your time, talent, and treasure. Well, we know tithing of our time is volunteering, giving of ourselves, giving of our gifts. We can see how that impacts people. We can see what a difference it makes when we reach out and help someone else, when we serve, and when we develop our gifts to a degree that they are of benefit to all. We can see that. That makes sense. Tithing of our treasure. Giving to where we're spiritually fed, looking at the world not as a place where we are just a consumer of everything that comes to us, but where we take a portion and we choose, we decide, we step into the power of being a co-creator. And we say, I will circulate to cause more of where I see spiritual nourishment shared. Those two things are pretty simple and pretty easy to understand. And it's pretty easy to see how they're circulating. They're a practice of circulating, that idea that we're an inlet and an outlet of all that is God, and that we're here as circulatory beings. We have a circulatory system. We live on a planet that is a circulatory planet that has a full ecosystem. We live in a galaxy that intertwines, interacts. We live in this whole process. So why would that not be the process that activates the wellness within the fullness of our being, right? We cannot have wellness if we stop the flow. We cannot have wellness if we step back and we decide not to circulate. In fact, just start thinking about that. Step back and start to stop circulating. Stop circulating. Stop circulating. It leads to death, does it not? Not the physical. Well, it would lead to the physical death too, because you wouldn't be breathing. But it leads to the spiritual death of being, because spiritual life comes from when we are activating our truth. And our truth is that we are one. There is a united energy field that is God consciousness, and we are of it. So we feel good when we are activating that process, when we are dancing as if we are of it, because that's our true nature. That's our true selves. The piece that doesn't always make sense to people from abundance teachings and prosperity teachings is the idea of time. Tithing of your time, talent, and treasure. This is the one that's a little bit of a paradox. Tithing of your time, according to Stretton Smith in the 4T program, tithing of your time is taking time, reserving time, making time, creating time, not taking it out of your daily life, but creating it within your daily life for your spiritual practice. So that can look like keeping a divine appointment at your spiritual community every week. That can look like reading spiritual books. That definitely looks like taking time in meditation, taking time in the silence, taking time in prayer, and giving that time to yourself. But how does that make sense? A lot of people have the idea that giving something to yourself is selfish. You know, there are even concepts that praying for yourself is selfish. Does anyone feel a little guilty when you give yourself time? Does anyone feel like it would be just too much to ask that you would be able to create a space at home and for at least an hour a day, if not more, spend time with a spiritual journal, a spiritual book? Would you feel an impulse of bringing out something that is calling you and saying, oh, don't do that, you don't have time. You need to finish these tasks. You need to be doing this work. You need to be attending to other people. Or do we recognize and practice that that time is the most important time we can spend? There's a problem in our culture when we treat that time as something that is not a priority. Because that time, that small, you know, the idea of the straw that broke the camel's back, that idea of the tipping point, It's that little bit that's needed, just like a tithe of talent and a tithe of treasure. That's why it's this idea of just a small bit, just a small bit. Would you just take this small bit and dedicate this time to the most important practice of your life? The most important, the most fruitful. You know, the time that we spend together in spiritual community, in that silence, that little moment is like the tithing of time in the service. It's the most powerful moment, I believe, in the service, because it's the moment that goes beyond personalities, goes beyond words, goes beyond sound. It's the moment of absolute receiving. It's the moment of collective consciousness and dedication to the stillness. Are we willing to tithe our time? And do we see that as selfish? Do we honor and set that time forward as a priority, as a first thing to do, as a gift to our source, as an offering to our source, offering to that which created us, so that we may say in that practice and in that process, so too shall the rest of my time be according to this dedication. So too shall every other moment of this day be in alignment with what I have set forth in this time of silence, in this time of peace, that I have chosen to take time to connect with the core of my being, to connect with the I am nature, and allow that practice to bless and pave the way for every other minute of the day. Circulation is not just about serving others directly. You have to develop your spiritual self, your spirituality, your divine essence, in order to truly help others. We know that a lot of help has been offered on the planet that hasn't always been helpful, no? There's help that's enabling. There's help that's destructive. There's help that's manipulative. But when we develop our spiritual self, the fruits of that development are spiritual nourishment for everyone and everything around us, because we are an instrument at that moment, an instrument of God consciousness. Charles Fillmore said that Jesus taught that the realities of God are capable of expression here in this world, and that man within himself has God capacity and power. Man in himself has God capacity and power. It's unfortunate that that idea in some forms of Christianity and in some expressions of humanity has been thought to be sacrilegious, that it's been thought to be arrogant, that it's been thought to be bad, to think that we, oh little ones, could actually develop God consciousness, that we could actually develop a mind that is beyond this human mind. There is a pull in our culture to say that we cannot be excellent because only God is excellent, that we cannot be divine because only God or Jesus Christ was divine, that we cannot be an instrument of God consciousness. We cannot circulate God because only God, where only God can be God. What God is that? Is that the God that's the man in the sky that we've made in the image of a human being? When we take the judgment out and we recognize our calling, we will move out of the problem that says only God is good, perfect, that we are imperfect and flawed. It's not saying that of the human condition, there's not a truth to that. It's easy, isn't it, for us to say we're imperfect and flawed. Like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. You do not have to be special to realize that we can show up as the smut of the earth. We're really, we're good at that. But it does take a cosmic consciousness to recognize that on the other side of that paradox is the truth of our being. And that is that we are emissaries of light. That is that we are here to inherit the kingdom, the queendom, the consciousness, and here to develop our God potentialities, our God expressions. This idea that holds us back, limits our belief in what we are and who we are, whether it's in ourselves or in our world. This idea that we are flawed holds people back from activating their divinity. In fact, it lets us off the hook, does it not? It lets us off the hook. It makes us somewhat okay with being not accountable for how we show up in our humanity. Remember, this is fundamentally different from accepting who we are and our supposed imperfections as far as our human ability to fit an ideal. But don't we take on this ideal more than we take on the divine blueprint? I mean, think about it for a moment. We sometimes shy away from taking on our divine blueprint that was demonstrated in the master teacher. We shy away saying, oh, not that, I could never fit that. Yet we make agreements with these ideals and we let them inform our emotions and our lives. We let them direct our way. These ideals that humanity creates. Like I am supposed to be the perfect size and I am supposed to look exactly like this or like that, even when the package, my God-given package, is nothing like that. What percentage of women look like the images that we see thrown all over the media and film world? What percentage of women fit that ideal? Yet we make an agreement with it every day. Every day. And we have the tendency as the human, and I say us as the collective of the human limited consciousness, to say, well, this is the ideal and that's not me. What else do we do it with? Our bank accounts, our success, our families, our status. We're constantly looking at ideals and feeling the emotions of not meeting them, yet missing the one ideal that will transform and turn the world. The only one worthy of our attention, the only one worthy of our intention, and the only one that we can actually fulfill. So are we willing to trade off the idea of an uncertain world, the idea of false idols, the idea of false goals, things that will never lead to anything, to be ready to live in the flow of a limitless God, a limitless nature, a nature that is truly our true nature, that is always pulling itself, always pulling us into expression, not as a separate force field, but as a oneness, as an evolution, as an unfolding. The worst part about the illusion that we're separate, about the illusion that we can't be circulating God, that how could we be? Because we're not worthy. We're not able. We're not somehow of that blueprint. That's somehow reserved for someone else. The worst part is that it absolves people from attending to Christ's invitation to come follow me. The invitation to unfold the consciousness of the absolute. So when is circulating God easy? When is circulating God easy? Let's look at it. We can look at it by first asking the question, when is it hard? It's hard when we're in a state of fear. It's hard when we're in separation. It's hard when our actions are being destructive. It's hard when we're feeling oppressed or we're oppressing another. But it's easy when we're free from a state of fear, free from separation, free from destruction, free from oppression. It's easy when we're in the state of consciousness that is secure, authentic, loving, creative. It's easy when we behold the Christ in others. When we look through any illusion and we call forth, we look to the Christ nature, the highest self, the I am nature of each one of us. When we actually activate the practice of namaste, which is the light in me, the Christ in me, the awakened one in me, beholds and greets, activates that one in you, sees that one in you, knows it to be your divine birthright, knows your blueprint beyond a shadow of a doubt. When we are in that state where we recognize we are born blessed and we let no appearance come in the way of that knowing. We let no human conditioning come in the way of that knowing. We let no judgment come in the way of that knowing. We recognize that all beings are born blessed. And if our internal programmed judgment, human condition, limitation, ego, self does not agree with that, we set it aside because we will not make agreements with false idols and false images and false thinking. We will only be in agreement with the spiritual truth. So rearrange my mind, sweet spirit, to show me this truth, to activate this truth, to know that we are born blessed. And lastly, when we are in a state of acceptance, a state of non-resistance, this is the state of healing, this is the state of harmonizing, this is the receptive state. This is the receptive state. So can we, one, call on our divinity? Can we ask ourselves at each moment to take on this practice by, one, looking at each moment and asking, what am I circulating in this moment? Pausing long enough to ask that. What am I circulating in this moment? Ask for the help. Ask the question. Asking is activating the spiritual kingdom. Ask and know you will receive. What am I circulating in this moment? And ask, how shall I show up? Am I circulating God, and how can I? Next, seek the mind of Christ. Seek the mind of Christ. You can think of this as seeking the mind of enlightenment, seeking your highest nature, seeking your I am, seeking that which is beyond words, beyond time, beyond form, beyond religion. But seek that nature because it is more real than the human condition. Charles Fillmore said, superconsciousness is the goal towards which humanity is working. Regardless of appearance, there is an upward trend continually active throughout all creation. The superconsciousness is the realm of divine ideas. Its character is impersonal. It therefore has no personal ambitions, knows no condemnation, but is always pure, innocent, loving, and obedient to the call of God. He goes on to say, living in the superconsciousness calls for nothing less on our part than a definite recognition of ourselves as sons and daughters, expressions, that's editing, of God, right here and right now, regardless of appearance to the contrary. We know we are sons of God. Why then do we not acknowledge it and proceed to take possession of our God heirdom? That is what Jesus did in the face of the most adverse conditions. He goes on to say the method by which Jesus evolved from sense consciousness to God consciousness first was to recognize the spiritual selfhood and a constant affirmation of its supremacy and power. That realization. He says, secondly, by the power of his word, he penetrated deeper into the omnipresence and tapped the deepest resource of his mind, whereby he released the light, life, and substance of spirit, which enabled him to get the realization that wholly united his consciousness with the Father mind, his consciousness with the source mind. That leads to the next practice. The next practice is to take on our ability to bless, to take on an unceasing prayer practice, and to allow that prayer practice, to allow that ability, that calling, that charge, to use the power of the word, the power of the mind, to turn the tides, to shift the motion, to acknowledge, to bring out the divine, to see it. I was driving to the airport with my mother, and we were driving by a car, and the whole back of the vehicle was plastered with bumper stickers. And as we got closer, I became horrified at what I was reading. The bumper stickers said the most crazy, sad things. Said things about travel to new places, meet new people, then kill them. Things about slavery. Things about oppression. There was actually a bumper sticker, which who thinks you'd even have, someone would have made this? But you know where it says, make peace, not war? Make war, not peace. Give war a chance. Give war a chance. And I mean, there were a lot. And I'm pulling up, I'm like, can you read those? While I'm driving, like, read those to me. And what was happening within my being and within hers was a judgment and a rejection in that moment, a frustration. But breathing into that moment, that frustration turned into compassion, and it turned into grace. That was a former Marine. A former Marine who has seen and been affected by the atrocities of the human condition. So in a moment of grace, the conversation in the car shifted from, oh my, you know, the drama, the invitation to get sucked into it, the invitation to start circulating the yuck, and it shifted from that into a powerful prayer of beholding the presence, beholding the sweetness of spirit, that was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful child that was born onto this planet, that has experienced and seen and activated whatever it is in that line of thinking to want to decorate and demonstrate and dance with it. So it turned into a prayer of consciousness, of saying, on behalf of all humanity, I am sorry for your experience. On behalf of all humanity, let me offer you love. On behalf of all humanity, let me be a space of kindness. Let me in this moment sow peace. Let me in this moment open up to the possibility of understanding. If you've heard the Hawaiian healing prayer, it's ho'oponopono. And those words encapsulate the idea that I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, on behalf of all of creation. What does it take to circulate God? And are we willing to take on that practice and to step into it each moment? Because it is our calling, it is our birthright, and it is for each of us to do. Namaste.